Hey there. Today I want to talk about RTFM. RTFM stands for Read the Manual. I will let you fill in the blank for yourself. RTFM certainly feels rude and harsh, but at the same time, there's also a bit of optimism to it. The optimism being that everything that you want to know is out there, you just have to go look for it. But this presumes a couple things. Perhaps most importantly, that the person being told to RTFM knows where to look and what to do once they get there. So today, I'd like to dig into how to read the manual and at least give you a place to start. Today, we'll be covering reading man pages and using the man command, making use of help flags, and deciphering usage instructions for commands. So let's go. When it comes to the shell, the so-called manual is a man page. Man page being short for manual page. We can access a man page by using the man command. We can pass man the name of a command and get back its corresponding man page. To see what this looks like, let's start with the ls command. And if you're anything like I was, your first impression of using the man command is that you don't know what to do. The controls inside man are very similar to those inside of Vim, which is helpful if you're a Vim user, but if you're not, the only remotely helpful thing on the page is the message at the bottom with your flashing cursor that says press H for help or Q to quit. If we press Q, we do in fact jump back to the safety of the terminal. If we run man ls again and go back inside and hit H instead for help, we see this. Again, at the bottom of the page, our flashing cursor directs our attention to the message that says press return for more or Q when done, and return does in fact bring us down a line at a time. This help text is in fact helpful for figuring out how to move around inside of man, but as it's not particularly easy to read, I'll just summarize the movement commands that I think are most useful. Pressing Q, we're brought back to the man page, where we can use J to move down, K to move up, D to move down a page, U to move back up a page, capital G, which is to say Shift G, to move to the bottom of the page, and GG to move back to the top. And don't worry about memorizing all these commands right now. I'll make a gist and link it below. So now that we know how to move around inside of man, let's take a look at some of the pieces of the man page. First, at the very top, we have a name section. This has the command, followed by a short description of what the command does. Next, there's a synopsis section that has usage instructions, such as how to pass flags and arguments to the command. And then we have a description section. In the case of our ls man page here, we have some more detailed information about how to use the command, followed by a list of all of the flags. Sometimes these flags are under the description, other times there's a separate options section that has this information. And if you're lucky, there will also be an example section somewhere, and we'll take a look at an example of that in a little bit. So now we know we can move down with J, up with K, to the top with GG, down with D, up with U, things like that, but are we really expected to read through all of these flags if we want to figure out how to do something new? Well, you could, but I certainly don't recommend it. The easier route is to search, and we can search in man by using slash. That is /. So if I type a /, you can see my cursor down at the bottom has a slash in front of it, and I can type a word. So let's say that we wanted to search for the word long within this page that you can see at the bottom of the screen in the middle. If I type long and hit enter, it highlights the word and brings that line to the very top of the screen. Now let's say that I do want to search the man page for the word long, but this line is not the instance of long that I'm looking for. So to continue searching through the page, I can hit N. To search back through the page, I can hit capital N, which is to say Shift N. Back down again, I can hit N. And eventually, I get to the last instance of long in the page, and at the bottom you can see pattern not found. And it's important to note that while we can search forward and backwards with the N and capital N, we're also free to use the other movement commands like J and K, U and D, and then back to using N and big N whenever we want. An important gotcha to note with this is that if you're at the bottom of the page or just past the instance of the word that you're searching for and you try to search for it, it'll give you this pattern not found, and that's because it's searching forward from your position in the page, and if you're at the very bottom, you're obviously not going to be able to find anything. At this point, though, we can search backwards through the page using question mark, and then at this point, N searches backwards through the page, and big N searches forward, which is, say, down the page. To work around this issue, I usually always hit GG to go to the top of the page, and then search with slash, just to make sure I'm not missing anything. And again, don't worry about memorizing all of these right now. I will put these commands in the gist as well. So now that we know the basics of how to use the man command, let's take a look at a real-life example of how we might go about using this. So, as an example, let's say we wanted to list all of the files in our directory, but we want to list the file names with their sizes from largest to smallest. And let's assume that we worked with the ls command before, and we know that there's a -l flag that will give us a long listing. In the center here, we see 247, 1947, 692, and these are the byte sizes of our files, but they're not listed from largest to smallest. Instead, the files are listed in alphabetical order. So instead of this, we could think about what we want, and we could realize that what we actually want is to sort on file size. So thinking about that, the words sort and file size would be excellent to search for inside of a man page. So here in the man page for ls, let's search for sort. This first hit is in the description and doesn't look particularly helpful, so let's keep going. This next bit looks like access times, which we don't want. Also not what we want. Ditto. Ditto. And there we go. Sort by file size. -big S. So let's close out of man. Run ls l big S. And we're sorted by file size. Also, something to note here about flags. If you have two flags like this that are single characters and neither of them take an argument, you can actually run them together and in either order. And if we wanted more reader-friendly file sizes than just a byte count, we could use the H flag. This is an excellent opportunity to show one of the great uses for man pages in the other direction. The case when you see a flag that you've never seen before and you want to know what it does. In this case, the H flag. So let's open man ls back up, and this time let's search for -H. This brings us straight to the flag description and tells us exactly what this flag is for. And as I said earlier, some man pages will have an example section as well. One example of this that I found is the zip command. Now, oftentimes the example sections are at the bottom, so what I like to do is hit capital G to get to the bottom of the page, and then question mark to search backwards, and then search for examples. This specific example section of this specific man page has actually been helpful to me several times before, as I always forget how to zip an entire directory, and as you can see here, it outlines exactly how this works, as well as the details. Outside of the ls command, the -H flag is usually used to trigger help output. For example, if we call curl with -H, we get its rather lengthy help output. Oftentimes, the --help flag will get you the same output. And a quick tip for dealing with verbose help output, or really any verbose output in the shell, just pipe the result to less, which gives you the same ability to scroll down and up with J and K, D and U, and search with slash as you would find in man. And when you're done, exit by typing Q. And one gotcha to watch out for when dealing with man pages and help flags is that sometimes commands are broken up into smaller commands. So an example of this would be get. And if we search through this man page enough, we eventually get to a part that tells us that the command is essentially broken up into many other smaller commands. So if we want to know something specific about get commit, then we're going to want to do man get -commit to get to the man page that we want to see. Additionally, if we want to see the help output for this, we shouldn't run get -h, we should run get commit -h. And finally, for the man command, let's go over the usage format, like what we see here in the synopsis section. So oftentimes you'll see all caps stand in for values, both for arguments and for flags. So if a man page says command file, then the usage is command and then some file as the argument. But the usage information often tells us much more than just this. So for example, if we have command capital file, this is a single required argument, file. If file is wrapped in square brackets, this means that it is a single optional argument. This means that the command takes one or more arguments, but it requires at least one. And if we have both, this means that we have one or more optional arguments, which is to say 0, 1, or many. And the same format holds with flags. It's also important to know that there are several varieties of flags. First, we have single character flags. Then there are also word flags that are usually preceded with a dash dash, but you'll sometimes see these with just a single dash. And another dimension of a flag is that it's either a switch or it takes an argument. Here are some examples of what I mean. Both of these flags are what I would call a switch. They don't take any arguments, they just trigger some kind of behavior. And then here are two flags that aren't switches, which is to say they take arguments. And it's important to note that even though a flag may take an argument, the command itself can also take an argument. So here, the order of the things that follow the command is important. There's command, there's a flag that takes an argument, the argument for that flag, and then finally an argument for the command. In cases like these, the flag argument will necessarily have to follow the flag it corresponds with, so the following line is also equivalent, with the command argument following immediately after the command. And lastly, like we just saw earlier, the single character switch flags can be combined together. Well, that's it for today. If you have any questions or episode requests, please comment below or tweet me at ForkBabam. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Ah!